You're listening to Two Chunks and a Hunk, a movie podcast where we give pumps and dumps. Hello and welcome to Two Chunks and a Hunk. My name is Jordan Wonders, and this week I'm your chunk.
I'm Doge, and I haven't gone by Obi-Wan since, before you were Chunk.
Obi-Wan.
And I'm Carter, and these are not the hunks you are looking for.
You are, though, if you think about it, the hunk that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Why?
It is I! Because on this day, maybe on this day...
Of course I know him. He's me.
He's me.
My family might be mad that I don't remember. It's been planned out, but I can't tell you when. I just ride the wave. I'm going to Disney World.
Sure,
yeah.
Okay, we're doing a lot of recordings, and I'm actually happy to do a night recording in Casa de Chunk about not a very scary movie.
Yes.
It's like the first time we've done this, and it hasn't been a scary
Yeah, when we have to do
movie.
Two Chunks nights, it always lands on the real spooky ones.
We're good now.
Yeah,
But,
we're fine.
guys, I'm going to be not only at Disney World, Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you that don't know, is basically the Star Wars land of Disney World. They own Star Wars, and this was a big part of the plan decades ago. And I'm so excited to be there. Chelsea, my wife, we have watched a Freeform, which is former ABC Family, which is also owned by Disney. Freeform had a documentary about Galaxy's Edge that was 2 hours long. I can't wait to be there. So you should be soon, maybe yesterday or today, following along with me as I go to Galaxy's Edge. Two Chunks is going to be sending some of that experience to y'all. It kind of fell at a perfect time.
Yes.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also feel like your second most uttered phrase on this planet is, so I'm going to Disney World.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
The first time I went to Disney World, I was 27 years old.
Oh, wow.
On this coming Friday, no, not this Friday. Next Friday, I'm turning 31.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in 4 years, this is going to be my sixth time.
Yeah.
So
I
fifth
know.
time to Disney World. I've been to Disneyland once. That's enough.
Sure.
in
There's
my-
no need to go back.
in my opinion. But yeah, it's wild. But I'm very happy with it. I'm very excited. So yeah, Galaxy's Edge is where I'll be, and that kind of makes me hunky. It's just too perfect,
I'm
right?
big jealous.
Well,
very
I
big
know for
jealous.
sure we have a fast pass. I think it's a fast pass for Smuggler's Run, to where we will get to be in the life-size version of the Millennium Falcon.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll be walking around in
Yeah.
that.
Oh, you know
with
what?
videos of that,
It's
which would
weird.
be
That
cool.
doesn't make me less jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually
that
makes me
only
more
made it
jealous.
worse,
That'll be
I
fun.
think.
That's
for
pretty
me.
weird
Maybe
how
pretty
that
excited,
works.
Pretty excited for it.
That's amazing. Very happy for you.
Cool. Yeah, just go live my childhood dream and tell me how that goes.
I will.
Thank you.
You'll see it on Instagram. Follow Two Chunks and a Hunk on Instagram to get all that good content.
Speaking of good content, Doge.
We're gonna tell them what we're watching.
I'd
first.
love to do
We
that.
gotta tell them what movie we're watching.
I'd love to
before
do
I
that.
Tell them about that movie.
Speaking of good content, let's remember our own. Sorry, I'm just so jazzed
Yeah,
right
dude,
now.
it's tough.
I'm like
really excited.
Very scattered.
Yeah.
And I'm scattered because the movie we're talking about is Star
Star
Wars
Wars
Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yeah.
Real quick, a point of order. And I'm trying really hard not to be the well-actually guy, but I might accidentally be the well-actually
We
guy
need
during
that for Star Wars, though. You need that.
Disney is not referring to these by their episode numbers anymore.
Why not?
They're pretty much just going by Star Wars: A New Hope. Or
It's a
anything like
circle.
that.
Episode 9 is going to end with the birth of Anakin on Tatooine.
I think
And
so,
It's just
yeah.
Gonna be
Yeah.
It's going to be referred to as the Star Wars cycle.
Star Wars is a flat circle. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I think the episode numbers really don't appear outside of the opening crawl.
Do you think
So-
that's to bring some more synergy to the fact that the Star Wars movies will never stop being made by Disney?
I think so.
Probably. So that
I
they don't
think
have to be
so.
like, Episode 40.
Because
XLVIII.
isn't it called Star Wars Rogue One, or is it just Rogue One?
It is Star Wars Rogue One.
No, it's
Or
Rogue One: A Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Solo:
Star Wars stories
a
are taking
Star Wars
taking
story.
the episode. Okay.
Yeah, but if you look at
that's kinda
the
confusing.
new Blu-ray cover art that was just released, like everything's called Star Wars: The Phantom Menace or Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back.
Which, how do you
or
feel
whatever,
about that
so.
cover art?
I don't love it. I wish we could keep some of the Drew Struzan.
Why would you not just
poster
do the
art.
OG
Yeah, it's
stuff?
like the most iconic art. But I think that's because they couldn't get him back for the sequel trilogy, and so they had to make something that looks like it all goes together. We'll talk about the sequel trilogy in a couple of weeks, probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We will definitely be talking about the sequel trilogy.
I would say almost 100%.
There's no question about it. So before we jump in, I think it's safe to say that kind of across the board for the three of us, Star Wars is kind of the dream for us to be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, speaking for myself, it is, I think, the earliest thing I was ever obsessed with.
Yeah, that might be me too.
Maybe Spider-Man before it, but probably not.
I had
I can't remember.
I had A New Hope, this movie, on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
And when my aunt found out how obsessed I was with it, she gave me my very much older cousin's childhood VHS copies of the original trilogy to keep. And I remember
I can see the worn
finding
edges
out,
of our copies
Yeah.
right now in my head.
Yeah, me too.
and I remember being like, there's more?
Yeah.
Yep.
It keeps going?
I remember being so frustrated at the people that were bummed that Disney bought Star Wars.
Yeah.
That never was me. And that might have been you for a season, but I was like, why not?
It was not. I was not
always
bummed.
about more of it. I don't care.
I wasn't upset.
Make more of it.
I think people's idea was like, oh, they're just going to put Mickey Mouse in Star Wars. And it's like,
No,
I don't think you know how business works.
Maybe there's a scenario where you can dilute the franchise,
certainly.
but you can't dilute the OGs.
Right. We're having this conversation about Disney many weeks too early for me to feel comfortable talking
Yeah,
about it.
Okay.
We'll
That's
get
enough. Sorry,
more
sorry,
into
sorry.
the meat of that, I think, eventually.
Yeah, hopefully. Around episode 7.
But my point here is that this is a series that is very dear to our hearts. So there's a lot of pressure right now.
Yeah,
I don't
there
feel
really
pressure.
is.
You don't feel it?
No.
Really? I do.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, I definitely feel the pressure.
Interesting. Well, let's dive into that pressure with a synopsis from our good
Oh, guys,
friend.
I'm so worried. I can't
There it
hold
is.
anymore.
Okay, there's the pressure. I figured. Sorry, we're going to take a pause. Carter just vommed and vommed again all over the studio
guys,
in
I'm
our
ready.
new gear.
I'm ready.
And into the new gear, Doge, would you deliver a synopsis for our ear holes?
Yes. This week's guest synopsis was written by J. Welch 5742.
J. Welch.
Thanks for the grape juice.
Thanks for that juice.
Thanks for that grape juice, Jay Welch.
J. Welch 5742 writes, the Imperial forces, under orders from cruel Darth Vader, hold Princess Leia hostage in their efforts to quell the rebellion against the Galactic Empire. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon, work together with the companionable droid duo R2-D2 and C-3PO to rescue the beautiful princess, help the Rebel Alliance, and restore freedom and justice to the galaxy.
I dig it.
Yeah,
Pretty good job, J. Welch.
fair enough. So, is there a more iconic opening to a movie ever?
This was the verbatim
No.
question I asked my wife when we were watching it.
Really?
Yes. And
There
it's
is
no.
not.
She was like, it's not even, I can't even think of another movie opening.
Right.
Right? Can't. So, no. I say no.
No, not even close.
I mean, this movie starts and is immediately iconic from the get-go.
Yeah. It's going to be so hard to.
Objectivity, man, it is.
it's very
elusive.
tough. It's very tough for this, yeah.
Because I have the thickest nostalgia goggles when it comes to all things Star Wars.
Even, I'll say it now, like, I'm not super pumping yet, but even from the very beginning, Star Wars is acting as if it already knows what Star Wars will become. And
Right?
it blows my mind.
It
really
steps
does.
into itself with such confidence.
With that kind of, John Williams, with that kind of gravitas from the first frame,
yeah.
it's like saying, it's like a boxer and it's giving you all of his accolades. He's like the greatest of all time. You've never heard of him until now. And then he comes in and destroys everybody. Like,
It's Babe Ruth calling a shot.
I cannot believe it. I'm going to talk about, and especially in the original series, probably over and over again, the unbelievable risk that George Lucas and everybody on board took for these movies, and how it 100% paid off. Star Wars might be the reason that I'm an eternal optimist. It's like, well, maybe,
Wow.
it's like, why not try? Because
Star Wars made it.
Maybe enough, right? Which is
Right.
kind of a silly thing to say, right?
Yeah.
But like maybe enough people are on board. Because who? I don't. What's the think tank for that group? Who says
real.
let's do it?
There's
and
like-
all these people. Well, not all of them.
Well, there's that quote from George Lucas that's like, I wanted to set out and make a modern fairy tale fantasy story where good guys are good, bad guys are bad, good guys win, bad guys lose. And I think maybe that speaks to that kind of spirit of eternal optimism.
Yeah.
Like, these are happy movies.
There is an endearing naivete
Yeah.
in the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah.
And we will have obviously plenty of times. I mean, we've got 11 weeks, which does not sound daunting at all. It sounds exciting. I wish there was more.
Yeah, I'm very pumped.
12 weeks actually. No, 11. 11 weeks to take a sides and talk about Star Wars as a whole. And I have
Right.
no doubt it'll keep happening. But I really don't think there is the term pop culture without this movie franchise.
Yeah.
This is
Sure.
legitimate.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely.
This is legitimate because I think, I don't know. I mean, this was one of the first movies that I can think of that characters were written more lines because enough people liked them.
Right.
yeah.
I can't, and we'll get more into that. We don't
And
have to
so,
do it all up front.
Let me start here with a question.
Yeah.
Did y'all's moms have a lie they told you about stormtroopers?
No.
Wait, what? No.
When I was a kid, my mom told me that the stormtroopers were robots and that's why it was okay that they were dying.
Whoa.
That's funny.
That's
So
a,
that I
that's a
wasn't-
really caring mom.
So that I wasn't like, why are they killing people? I can't root for people that are killing people. My mom was like, they're all just robots. That's why their skin's white and like they're
Oh.
like shiny.
oh,
And I was like,
so
yeah.
interesting.
Here,
Fair.
so my take from my parents, and I grew up in a home where my dad's like a Baptist pastor, right? And has a really incredible outlook on life. I could have a whole podcast about talking about how great my upbringing has been, and I'm very fortunate for that. But my parents were all like, for us, it was, this is the narrative. This is the Christ narrative.
Right.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Can you see? Like throughout the whole thing, it's like, look at all, and I would get that so often. Lord of the Rings with Gandalf.
Sure.
Anytime someone came back, Mufasa in the clouds, it was always like, hey, this is the Christ
Do you
narrative.
get it? Do you
Do you
get
see
it?
the Trinity?
Yeah.
Do you see all these things? And it was just like, oh my gosh. And for some reason, without getting super holy, like a phenomenal story was integrated into most stories I watched, that it made sense, right?
It certainly helps how mythic the scope of this
Yeah.
movie is. And that's why we have things like, when you talk about Star Wars and when you analyze it, there's things like Joseph Campbell's monomythic structure and like the hero journey. Like that stuff's all going to come up when you talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, of
things
course.
like, to me, the thing that really pushes it over the edge into that epic like space opera territory is John Williams' score, which is not my super pump. And I'm going to keep talking so you guys don't have a chance to interrupt if it is your super pump, so we can save that for later.
Sure.
But it's not my super pump. But John Williams channels nothing so much as a suite that was written about the planets, not so much their cosmological structures, not the Greek and Roman deities that they're named after, but kind of the horoscope types of ideas from them.
Yeah.
A suite called The Planets by a composer named Gustav Holst.
I know Holst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like this is, he really, I think, just sets the bar in terms of like, we're going for this operatic, mythic, like.
And that was
this
his
is-
influence, you're saying, was Holst?
Absolutely. I
Oh,
mean,
awesome.
listen to Mars, Bringer of War,
Yeah.
particularly from that suite.
Yeah.
Like,
Very Vader.
absolutely. Like
Yeah.
this is so clearly the tone they're going for with
Yeah.
this, and it's incredible. And I think that's why they've endured in that way that your parents are able to talk
Yeah,
to you
and
about.
Sure.
on a more childish like level too, it feels so Peter and the Wolf.
Yeah,
It does.
Like
very
you
much.
can have this story without anybody talking, which
Yeah.
you're gonna see maybe we're drinking the juice or something, but like
100% we
I
are.
know exactly what Leia's song is. I know when it's Han. I know when it's Vader. I know when it's Luke. Like I know when there's about to be a fight. I know if there's some mystery. Like
So let's stay on John Williams for a second because he was going to be my super pump originally until I realized that
until he blew it.
right.
Until I realized this music in Star Wars is so bad.
No, until I realized that if I made him my super pump once, I would have to do it for every movie over and over again.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I decided that my crazy move is John Williams is my super pump for Star Wars the series, the end.
I mean, if we want
Yeah.
to do
Like
our
valid.
first ever Two Chunks Lifetime Achievement Award,
right? Yeah,
Lifetime
it's John
Achievement
Williams.
John
Pump,
Williams.
it's John Williams.
We
it's not
talk
the
about him
first ti-
anytime we do a movie that he has
Yeah.
written the score. We spend time talking about him.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to him more in this series, guaranteed.
Probably in this very episode.
The what is it? The Force theme is my favorite piece of movie music. Not ever, but close. It is
Yeah.
up there for me.
Yeah.
I mean, John Williams. without him, Star Wars isn't Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely.
And I think he is as integral to the story as anything else.
Yeah. And you can't beat his creativity. The fact that even
No.
with the new ones, he decides to try and be new.
Right. Even
Yes.
though he's notorious for reusing old music in other
Sure,
things,
sure.
it's just that good
Yeah.
that I don't care. It's like if you make a delicious sauce and then put it on another sandwich that you're going to serve to me.
Right.
Fine.
It's fine.
The
It's still a
sauce
good
works.
sauce.
Yeah. It's good sauce.
Yeah. Why would I not want the sauce on the sandwich?
Yeah. John Williams is
That's
the
totally
Valentina sauce of the movie universe.
Bingo, bango. And also, if I may, bongo.
That's what I thought you would
Fair
say.
enough, yeah.
Hey, how about we talk about the movie?
I'd love to. So we get the crawl,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, where did that even come from? Doge, I feel like you're a bottomless well.
Yeah, old serials like Flash Gordon.
Okay.
So things from the 30s, which were a huge inspiration for Indiana Jones as well.
Okay.
These kind of serialized adventure stories would often begin with a big, long scroll of text so that if you missed the last chance your hero was in theaters before the newsreels of the boys in the trenches, then you're caught up to date on his story, right? And so,
Right.
so
Brilliant.
George opens his movie with this long scroll instead of traditionally like Star Wars. And then like as the movie's starting Mark Hamill and
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher and
Right.
Harrison Ford.
So we can kind of begin in media res but still knowing what's going on.
Yeah, he saves all credits for the end of his movie, which is a huge, huge big deal. Even now, that's still a huge big deal.
Sure. Yeah. And we get the Imperial, it's a Star Destroyer, right, that's flying overhead. And
Yeah.
we get to watch that fly
Which, by
up
the way, is
above
my
us.
favorite designed ship in all of Star Wars.
It's pretty awesome.
I love the Star Destroyer.
It's one of my favorites, too.
And that's saying a lot because we've got a lot of ships.
we have a lot of shit.
And a lot
Very
of
much.
amazing ships.
So another very Star Wars thing is the pan down to a planet or to the action.
Yeah.
That is a distinctly Star Wars move.
And let me just take an aside again. Risk and the confidence, like the fact that he kept doing it, right? Yes,
Right.
it helped that in 1977 he made a movie that made $750 million worldwide. Okay, that
That's
helps you have some
unbelievable.
confidence. Let's keep doing the good things that we're doing.
Sure.
But the fact that is what you do.
But that's the called shot, right?
Yes.
I mean, after one movie, he said, well,
That's
I've
our thing.
invented an icon.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Good grief. And no one believed in him, and he became a gazillionaire because of it.
True.
Unreal.
And he's a goofy boy.
Very much.
And kind of a side note, but it's important here because Star Wars influences culture so much. I feel like it's important to talk about it. Have you ever watched, either of you, That 70s Show?
Yeah.
There's a whole plot line. Eric, played by Topher Grace, who in real life is a huge Star Wars fan. There's a whole plot line of when the first Star Wars movie comes out. Is it 77, right? Mm-hmm. And in That 70s Show, he goes and sees it alone in the theater. And it's just a shot of him in the dark in a theater seat. And then, and it just opens, his eyes go wide. And then it cuts 2 hours later and the credits roll and he's just crying in his seat.
Yep.
And then the rest of the episode is him telling everybody, you got to see this movie. You got to see this. And like, isn't it though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You know
like
what
that's
I mean?
a little fictionalized, but that's not that far off.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how, and every time I return to the well of Star Wars, I'm like, who do I know that needs this right now?
Did I tell
Who
you
do I know that
about
hasn't seen it?
when my mom first saw A New Hope?
No.
No.
So because they happened to be, she was on her way to do a mission trip in the Philippines. My mom's a really gifted singer and was going to be singing with this group. And they had a layover for like 4 days in LA. So it just happened that they went to the Chinese theater
Oh,
for opening
cool.
night for Of A New Hope
Oh my goodness
Whoa.
gracious.
and saw A New Hope at Chinese theater in LA.
That is amazing.
Unreal to me.
That's unreal.
Just stumbled
Wow.
upon it, right? That happens. So
Wow. So after we get the pan down to the action, the shot of the Imperial Star Destroyer flying overhead,
Yep.
we jump
Tractor
into...
beams in the Tantive 4, Vader in the boarding party. Yeah.
I'm going to stop saying the word iconic because it's going to get annoying. But
Yeah.
Vader coming through, the boarding party, everybody getting shotted, and then we get our droids. We get 3PO and R2-D2 running from the action, trying to be safe because they've got the plans from Leia that need to be delivered to Obi-Wan.
I think it's
Yeah.
so fun that these are the first good guys that we see.
Right.
I forgot that it's the two droids.
Yep.
They just kind of magoo their way through
They really do.
most of this
So,
franchise, all of this franchise.
There is a distinct presence of magooery
Mhm.
in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's something that I've realized I edit out in my head frequently.
Yeah, I
And
do too.
I make Star Wars way more serious than it is.
Yep.
And then when I watch it, I remember that it's like fun and silly and over the top and goofy.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
And in my head, it's like, it's this dark struggle between evil and good and who will rise above.
No.
And then in the movie, it's like, unhand me. Like, it's so... Speaking of which,
Oh, dear.
have you noticed that every non-main character in all of Star Wars talks like a 1950s radio host?
I mean, a huge influence on the stories is the serialized little movies
Right.
from like the 30s.
But
So that's not surprising.
Every stormtrooper is like, they're not down here anymore.
Well, that's pretty classic.
How
like,
about you?
Pretty classic 70s movie voice.
Yeah, I love
it just kills me because their voice is a radio. And so
Yeah.
everything a stormtrooper does is like,
Yeah.
right away, sir.
Yeah.
No
Yep.
doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, man. So at this point, what I would love to talk about is Luke, because on the ship,
Luke.
it's some explosions. It's a pod that gets away, and it's Leia in danger. That's
Yep.
the highlights of the ship.
Yep.
And then we go down to Tatooine, which is a very important planet in the Star Wars universe.
Sure.
And a lot of that is revealed to us in later stories. So we're going to hang on to some of that information until that point
Yeah,
and operate
we've
as
got
though we're learning.
3 months to talk.
Right.
Exactly. We got our time. We got to take our time.
But what we have on Tatooine right now is Luke. Because C-3PO and R2-D2 have been picked up by Jawas in their transport. Houdini!
Yep.
Right. And which Callie always is like, oh, I love when they take their hoods off. They're so cute. They look like teddy bears. I'm like, nope,
They
those are
don't.
Ewoks. You're thinking of Ewoks.
Whoops.
So
There
she
are a
just
lot
thinks
of fun little same height critters.
that's true.
Well, we got Jawas in this one. We got Ugnaughts in the next one on Cloud City. And then
Yeah,
we got Ewoks.
they're the ones that are tearing
on
apart
Endor.
the droids.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then what is it? Gonk droids, which are basically just moving trash cans. Those are about the same height and super adorable.
No
so.
way. Gonk droids are way smaller. Gonk droids are the ones that are like a little, they look like a doorstop.
Oh,
They're
those little zippy ones?
rectangles. Yeah.
The little squeaky zippy
That
ones.
always
Oh, no,
happened
I'm
to be-
sorry. I'm sorry. That's an Imperial Mouse droid. A Gonk droid is about the same height.
Yeah.
Looks like a refrigerator.
It's on an.
Yeah.
There's one on the Jawa transport.
There sure
actually.
is. Yep.
And so we get Luke. Luke is played by Mark Hamill, who I adore, and we get him pre-facial reconstruction in this movie.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful little boy, and he's not very great of an actor in this movie.
I love Mark Hamill pretty much undyingly. Mark Hamill's my super dump.
Dude, he almost was
For
mine.
A New Hope. Mark
He
Hamill,
almost
like,
was mine.
This boy
Yeah.
overacts, and
Oh,
it's
man.
distracting.
I agree.
When he says his lines, it takes me out of the movie.
I was
he's-
going to go down to Toshi Station and pick up some power converters.
Like, he's
You
such
can
a
waste time with your
whiny
friends when your
boy.
chores are done.
Yeah. Such a whiny
Yeah,
boy.
yeah, he's
whiny.
real whiny.
He didn't. There's not many things, if any, in Star Wars universe that have almost ruined it, right, for anybody, right? It's just too big of a cultural icon. But if he had, he was almost so whiny that it's going to be hard to believe what he becomes.
Right.
Right? It was
Yeah.
like it happened this fast.
Yeah.
You're that cool
3
in it
years.
now?
There's 3 years.
There's 3 years
this and
between A
Empire.
New Hope
I
and
know.
Empire. Like
Even then,
in
doesn't
universe.
feel like enough time almost.
Well, a lot of things change in 3 years.
I'm gonna defend it.
Okay, so he is your super dump, though.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
Yeah, I
unfortunately,
hear
because I
that.
love Mark Hamill. I
Of
think he's
course.
a great actor and a great dude. But
Yeah.
He was a baby at
he
this
was
point.
not a great actor at this point. I mean, Luke, the character, is 19. I don't know how old Mark Hamill was.
Probably
but
pretty close, to be honest.
yeah, I mean, he's a baby.
So at this point, we get the search for Ben Kenobi. Sorry,
Yeah.
for Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
There's so many. Like the
Yeah.
Falcon, Han. Like there was so
Princess
many.
Leia.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
it
it.
drives me crazy. I don't know how.
It drives me crazy
As a
also.
director, I don't know how you let that happen.
Yeah.
I think he also didn't know how he wanted everything to be pronounced yet. That's my guess. But I want to get to Obi-Wan about right now.
Yeah.
Because this is where things really take off in the Star Wars universe. This is where things start to come together. And it's when we realize that Ben, that old wizard, is actually Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I think is how George Lucas pronounces it.
Yeah.
The fabled Jedi Knight.
Yes.
Which what a freaking cool name for
my goodness.
role.
Yep.
A Jedi Knight? Come on.
That is so good.
That was cool before it was cool.
Exactly. But before we get to that point, I want to talk about how terrified I used to be and still very much am of the Tusken Raiders because, oh my goodness. Is there
Yeah.
anything scarier?
I love them.
They're creepy.
It's so cool.
There's something about not being able to really see them.
Right. But that sound is
Yeah.
I got goose pimples when you.
If
even
it were
made
up to me,
just
I'd
now.
kill all of them. Women, children, every single one of them.
Yeah, fair. Well, have I got news for you?
Not just the men either, which is crazy.
So sand people.
Sand people.
They hit Luke. They hurt him. Obi-Wan wakes him up.
That's true. And something that Obi-Wan does is he introduces Luke to the concept of a lightsaber.
I mean, this was almost my super pump.
It's my super pump.
Okay.
The
Amazing.
lightsaber.
Amazing.
It feels basic, and I really wanted it to be something or rather someone else, and I'll get to that. But when it boils down to it, the lightsaber is like childhood incarnate to me. The number of non-lightsaber endorsed items that I swung around pretending it was a lightsaber, the number of toy lightsabers I owned. I mean, a lightsaber is... If I had a genie that was like, you can own one fictional physical object, it's going to be a lightsaber for me.
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this was the moment I was introduced to that concept as a kid, and it still lives. As terrible as they look in this movie, as bad as the effect is, it is magical.
So did you watch these in release order as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because episode 1 came out in 99, so we were 5.
I watched this movie. I bet I was 3 years old when I became obsessed with this movie.
I was 11, so I definitely did.
I was not a release order boy.
Yeah.
I was a 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2.
Right.
3.
Yeah.
I was 4, 5, 6 for years because I didn't see one in theaters. The first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters was Attack of the Clones.
Same.
Wow.
And so because I was just not old enough to go to the theaters.
I was
for
a
that kind
babe.
Of stuff.
I was a wee babe.
I remember getting goosebumps seeing the poster of Anakin on Tatooine in the shadow of Vader.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
See,
And
that's
you know when
something
you're
I missed
walking
out
into
on.
the movie lobby and it's giving you all the tease, the super tease that you don't get till you get there.
Well, especially in '99 when there was no YouTube to just watch trailers
Man,
1,000
dude.
times.
Yep.
That's just
So
different.
Anyway, sorry, huge aside, but we get the lightsaber.
Oh man, yes. And Luke almost kills himself with it on accident by looking
the
directly
first thing he does
into
is
the
point
barrel.
it right at his eyes.
Yeah.
Which,
So-
I mean, hey, I didn't know what it was either when I first
So we
true.
get this speech from Obi-Wan right after this. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father. We fought in the Clone Wars. He was a great pilot and a good friend. He was betrayed by a young pupil of mine before he turned to evil, Darth Vader, all of that stuff. This is, to me, emblematic of my super pump, which is the world building of this.
Yeah.
Like, we have this movie, and part of it is the confidence that this movie just shows up with, where we have
That's
this
such a good word.
old space wizard saying all of these nonsense words, and somehow it's very cool, and somehow it has fueled nearly 50 years of additional storytelling after the fact.
Right.
I couldn't, as
Oh,
watching
well,
these
42,
movies,
not nearly
I
50. I
couldn't
think that's a stretch, but
I couldn't put myself there, and it makes me a little bit sad. But I couldn't put myself in the place of like seeing it for the first time. Yes,
Right?
I saw it for the first time, but there's something in my spirit that said this had existed before I knew about it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's wild. So much of it is
Watching
like,
it at
what
its
on earth?
its birth.
Yes.
yeah, it's crazy to me how much of this movie just... We talked about it a little bit with Pirates of the Caribbean, how much
Yeah.
of that was just invented whole cloth. I
Yeah.
think this is in a complete other, no pun intended, galaxy than
Sure.
that. Of just like...
It's like
there is-
Star Wars just is.
It is. It was like something that already existed, and George Lucas was like, "You guys don't know about this,
Right.
Yeah.
But it just is there. It springs immediately into being
From
as
the
this movie
beginning,
unfolds.
Star Wars
You know-
feels like we're being told about something that has actually been passed down for a long time.
Yeah,
Yes. And I don't know what narrative I put in my head of it being like it gained popularity long after it came out, which is such a lie because, I mean,
Yeah.
it did make... Did you know A New Hope of the original trilogy made the most money by like $200 million?
That's crazy.
Wow,
Did you know how many Oscars A New Hope won?
0.
6.
Whoa, I
6?
thought it was 0.
A New Hope won 6 Oscars.
Wow,
So all of the technical stuff.
sure, yeah,
And then I don't think it won, but it was nominated, I think, for original screenplay because of the story building. That's why I brought it up because it's
Yeah.
just like, where did this come from, dude? Like, what is going on?
Right.
How did this happen?
That's super cool. And speaking of super cool, as another aside, there's a video, I think it's called Obi-Wan Remembers. It's a fan-made video put together of this speech that he delivers to Luke, talking about Anakin and all of these different things with edits from the prequel trilogy set to some really great music. It's actually very impressive. So if you find yourself being like, I need more, do that.
yeah.
Yeah, this speech becomes a lot more emotional once you watch the prequel movies, once you watch through the Clone Wars animated series, and you understand who Luke's father is and how he's talking about him and what he's saying about him. It's just incredible. It's really incredible world building, I think, throughout the movie that really kind of finds its center in this speech from Obi-Wan.
And let's give credit where it's due. Alec Guinness is crushing this.
You know, he
hated it.
He
He
hated
did.
these, yeah.
He did hate these, but that doesn't matter because he really is
He's great.
delivering.
Here's the
in
thing,
these
too,
scenes.
because most of the screen time he shares is with Mark Hamill at 20 years old. And here's the thing.
right.
He's also probably the A-list guy on the list of doing, like,
Yeah.
one of the only really well-known people in the cast. So it was like, of course he was going to do well. I
Yeah,
mean, he's also
absolutely.
theatrical, right? Is he normally like a
Shakespearean.
Shakespearean
Stage
stage
yeah.
actor? Yeah. So it would be like Kenneth Branagh
Right.
being Obi-Wan Kenobi the first time we ever saw
That'd be
him.
pretty
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, he is so good.
And speaking of so good, we've got some dope things to move on to.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
before we do that, even though we're not very far into this movie, we're going to take a quick stop over to Shout Announcements.
To pick up some power converters.
Welcome to Shout Announcements. It's the part of the show where we give shout-outs and make announcements. I got a good one for you.
Tell us.
Hot off the press. This is going to be a shout-out to Tyler Station. That's where we are right now,
Here we are.
recording our podcast. Thanks for letting us use your space.
yes.
Also want to give a shout-out to Crumb and Kettle. We're not sipping right now because you're closed.
We're thinking about it.
But we wish we were.
We are
Bummed that we're not.
hugely bummed that we're not. Also, shout out to podbean.com because we pay them money and we put stuff on
ya.
them. It's mostly our podcast. That's podbean.com.
And I'd love to give a shout out to Story Shaped Life. We are, I don't think I'd call it sponsoring, but as you start to listen to Story Shaped Life when it comes out, at the very beginning, you will hear one of our voices as we begin to talk about different movie clips representing certain emotions. Emotions being the theme of this season of Story Shaped Life, 9 episode. Maybe they'll have an extra, but it'll be on for a couple of months. Would love for you all to give that a listen when it comes out. And it's enough of a big deal that we keep pitching it before it exists. But Story Shaped Life, love it. Also, our Famous is going to happen soon. And we're really excited
Very
about that.
soon.
Also, speaking of famous, I'll probably be famous after I go to Galaxy's Edge
That's true.
and become a Jedi myself. And if you want to see that,
Are you
it'll
gonna
be...
do that lightsaber thing?
I can't, dude, it is... Maybe I'm discovering how much of maybe an adult or a Star Wars fan that I am. It is too expensive for me. I think I'd rather buy 200 churros.
Those churros are not $1. You're out of your mind.
I'd rather buy 100... I'd rather buy 3 churros
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
than a lightsaber.
It's only $200.
Think about this. Hey, think
where
about
am I
this. A
gonna put
lightsaber
it?
is an eternal churro.
You're going to put
That's
the lightsaber
amazing.
in your office.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you
Why
are.
not?
No, I'm sorry, guys.
I want to give shout outs to listeners who sent in pumps and dumps. That would be listeners Brennan and Dillman. And listen, I read what you guys wrote, and I know you're the kind of guys who aren't afraid to put a lightsaber in your office. So maybe you should come be on
Is
our
Dillman
show.
going to...
Yep.
Okay.
And he's not doing it either.
I don't feel like you can even know that.
I do know that because his younger brother, also my brother-in-law, has been pleading with us to do it with him because he's not being allowed to do it by himself.
Sounds like that's the guy I want to hang out with.
Yeah, that's my boy.
Well, Nolan, shout out to you from Two Chunks. They love you the most.
Make sure you tune in next week when we talk about...
Wait, we want you to guess. Just kidding. It's obviously
right.
Empire
It's
Strikes
Empire
right.
Strikes Back.
Come
Yeah,
on,
you
obviously.
did it. You nailed it. We're very excited to talk about that movie and to continue our Imperial March through the Star Wars saga.
And here's the thing. If you don't like Star Wars or want to listen to it, we'll see you in 2020.
That's very true. That's a good point.
Love you very much.
See you next year.
And that's the end of that.
Hey, rate and review.
And we're back.
We are.
That was a good one.
So I want to remember, as we're talking about everything on Tatooine, remember that Leia is in peril and that her home planet is being threatened. It's
Yeah.
a peaceful planet.
Yeah, they're going to blow it up if she doesn't give them where she sent the plans.
It's true. And by the way, she gives them a fake answer, and they still blow it up. So they're those guys. They're tricky.
They out-sneaked her.
I've always said that they're tricky.
Yeah.
She sneaked on them, and they snuck right back.
There's one thing about the Empire, and it's that they're tricky. And speaking of tricky, those dang stormtroopers.
Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
So
Which,
they're not.
that's a lie.
Which is
My
funny.
super dump,
Oh.
I'm going to do it now because this line came up, and it made it stand out even more. Woo-wee. This is ridiculous. Somebody needs to be hit by a bullet. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can deal with James Bond, but there's a lot of red lasers flying around, and ain't nobody good getting hit. Again.
But they hit Leia with their first shot when they set it to stun.
Yes.
Well, but it's like a shotgun blast. It's like wide. It's like wide
this
angle.
And here's the thing. Part of the culture of Star Wars is everyone who watches it now assumes it's okay. No one's going to get hit. But I don't know why. I had a problem with this in New Hope.
Sure. It's
silly.
the most egregious here.
We get dozens of stormtroopers at a time trying to hit one 6'2" man in a vest.
Yep.
Going onto a giant ship. You can't do it?
Yeah.
Speaking of 6'2" men in vests, we're going to Mos Eisley because Uncle Ben and Aunt Beru have been killed pretty gruesomely, by the way.
got
And Luke,
burnt up.
Luke doesn't care.
I know.
I think he cares, just almost not at all.
Luke does not
They
care.
got burnt up, dude.
It's
And
pretty
Luke's,
horrendous.
Luke's first thought is, my aunt and uncle sure got crispy. I'll go with you to Alderaan. Finally, nothing's keeping me here.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crappy,
pretty
Luke.
distant. It's
Yeah.
pretty distant. But they go to Mos Eisley, and as they show up, we get our first taste of the Force. Mm-hmm. And that is the mind trick. Actually, our second taste of the Force, because Vader's already choked that one dude.
Yep.
And, these aren't the droids you're looking for, that whole thing. And
Yeah.
we get into the Mos Eisley Cantina with the most famous band in the galaxy. Once a week, stuck in my head. No joke.
Yep.
Really? That's
Once
funny.
a week, stuck
For
in my
me,
head.
it's the
see it.
second song they play.
Oh,
Not that
really?
one. Yeah, the second one gets stuck in my head all the time.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
Once we get into the cantina, which, by the way, is apparently the greatest hive of scum and villainy.
I mean, talk
in
about
the
world
galaxy.
building, though.
Yeah, for real.
This is another confident risk. They just kind of, I feel like it's the scenario of like when people created Pokemon.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get this big bingo-like cage with all these balls in it, and you pull it out, and you were like, slimy face.
Yep. They're just counting
10
on you
foot
to catch up.
2. Furry arms.
And buy
It's
it.
like, nope, this is all one person.
Yep.
But
Love it.
when they get in, one of the first things that happens is that somebody doesn't like Luke. And I don't like you either.
Yep.
And that dude gets his arm cut straight off.
And it bleeds way more than any other lightsaber wound in the other 8 movies.
Correct.
I'd never
Because they
noticed.
hadn't decided that lightsabers cauterize
Cauterize it.
wounds yet.
Yep. Yep.
But then we get the bad boy himself, the space outlaw, a man among men, Han Solo,
Yep.
who
There's
was
a lot-
almost my super pump for this movie.
There's a lot of movie character lists in the world where Han Solo is above Vader
Yep.
in terms
Yeah.
of iconic.
Absolutely.
And this is Harrison Ford. That is why.
He is for me.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, Doge, as a Spielberg guy
Yes,
and a
sir.
Star Wars guy.
Yes, sir.
Is Harrison Ford more indie than Han to you?
He's more Han because he was Han first. And he
Okay.
initially wanted to turn down the role of Indiana Jones because he was like, I didn't want to be just George Lucas's go-to guy.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted Burt Reynolds to do it, but they wouldn't let him out of Magnum P.I. No, Tom Selleck, not Burt Reynolds. Tom
Yeah.
Selleck. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
He's
By the way.
got, here's the thing, Harrison Ford, he was almost my super pump too.
Yeah.
Exudes the kind of confidence this franchise holds.
Very much.
Han
Yeah.
Solo is the manifestation of what Star Wars believes itself to be. He comes on the scene and is just there, brash, living his life, doing what he wants, and it felt like every single thing he did was one take. I felt like Harrison Ford was just like, this is how I'm saying it.
It feels like every time he finished a line and the camera turned off, he was just like crushed it and walked off.
So
He absolutely nailed it.
And this is a point of contention that we will get to months from now. In fact, the week before we review Rise of Skywalker, this is the moment when Han Solo's story begins. This is the moment when he begins to arc from somebody he was to somebody that he is.
Yeah.
It doesn't begin before this.
Yeah.
His story begins right here.
Yeah.
Right. Everything else would be considered background info.
Right, yeah. We don't need to know that stuff.
Sure.
Because the important thing about Han Solo is what he becomes
He chooses
because of
right
his
now in this
exposure
cantina.
to Luke and Ben.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of the things that Han does, there's a pretty... So I own all these movies on Blu-ray. That's how I'm watching them.
Yeah.
Currently, the only way to legally own them on Blu-ray is the George Lucas edit, which
Yeah.
means that in my version,
Jabba.
Greedo's shooting.
Well, and there's also a bad Jabba scene that was cut.
There's a bad Jabba scene. There's several bad edits that George Lucas was like, I think this is pretty sweet, and it's not.
So
Except for the ship stuff, which is cool.
in order to make everything more cohesive with the prequel trilogy, George Lucas, around the time that these were coming to VHS and coming to DVD, he went and added a bunch of CG. So that's why we really start to notice it when we get to Mos Eisley. And in my memory, it's most egregious here, most egregious on Cloud City in the next one, and most egregious with the blinking Ewoks in Return of the Jedi.
Agreed on all of the things you just
But
said.
it sticks out like a sore thumb. It has not aged well. It looks like a computer game from 1997. Like
Yes.
this whole thing with Greedo and Han is a prime example of stuff of just like changing stuff.
George Lucas's edits would have been my super dump, except I just choose to ignore them. So
Same.
there's that. But in George Lucas's world, Greedo shoots not even first. It's almost at the exact same time as Han.
Shoots the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because Han Solo, Harrison Ford, was digitally leaned. Like they went in and leaned him with CG, so he dodged the blaster shot.
But Han shoots first.
Yeah.
That's canon in my heart, in my soul, and in the Star Wars universe.
So with Disney purchasing Fox, there's rumblings of, hey, now that they own Fox, they own the original film masters of the unedited versions.
Please.
There's talk that they're going to release those on 4K soon, but that has also been a rumor since 2015,
I would
2014.
love to see if those make more money than the re-release, whatever the other thing was.
I think there's a chance.
Yeah.
So that's going to be awesome. But anyway, Han shoots first. That's the end of that discussion for me.
We get a bad Jabba scene where he steps on his tail that we don't need at all. And
True.
then we're off for all
and
intents
then
purposes.
we're off.
Yeah.
And speaking of off, we are introduced to what I will always call the character, the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon is one of the top inanimate object characters of all time.
It's almost as much Star Wars as lightsabers to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also get Chewie. We didn't talk about Chewie.
Yeah.
George's inspiration for
Oh, my
Chewie is his
goodness.
border collie, Indiana, who is also the namesake for Indiana Jones. So
I
very cool.
love Chewie. I think it's maybe an appropriate time to say we lost Peter Mayhew this year.
Yeah.
We're not breaking any news here. Everybody knows this, but that's just very sad. He was such a sweet guy and really leaned into the role of Chewbacca, really leaned
totally.
into the world of Star Wars. He was an awesome dude.
Yeah.
And Chewie is great. So much personality from what effectively is a huge border collie.
It's bear and walrus sounds that he's making.
Okay. That's fun.
As a lover, that's so cool. I didn't know that. As a lover of communication professor, I love that two of our most iconic characters in this series don't talk.
Right.
R2 and Chewie are just inflection. That's all they are.
There's that
But
part
you
of me.
know them.
Yeah.
I am somehow emotionally connected to two characters that don't speak words. Maybe the most like in terms of pulling your heartstrings, do two characters pull them more than R2 and Chewie?
Well, and just sheer screen time.
Well, and a level of innocence that they both have to an extent. I would love to hear. I wonder if there's something out there written about those two and what like the connections might be between the two of them as the only characters that iconic that don't speak at all. I love them so much.
Yeah, that's really great.
There is the grown-up rational part of my brain that has a problem with the language that Chewie speaks, where it's like, you're clearly not, like, that's not a different sound than you just made.
That's the
It doesn't
Tolkien
mean-
fan in you
Exactly.
who
yeah.
actually invented.
Right, like
other
that's not a
languages, yeah.
language. Those are just sounds.
Yeah,
but,
it's tough. It's hard to
yeah.
hard to believe.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're just making fun of Chewbacca now, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, that's valid.
So on the ship, we get a little training scene of Luke learning a little bit about the Force from...
As a kid, that blew my mind.
yeah, same.
The floating ball. I was like,
Yeah.
what on earth?
How's this happening?
This is amazing.
And we get some fun poked at Hokey religion from Han. And then we are under attack and drawn in by a tractor beam to the Death Star.
Yep.
And
That's
it
the
is
moon.
no moon. It is, in fact, a space station.
Who named the spaceships? Bravo. Who named these ships? Star Destroyer,
Yeah.
X-Wing, Y-Wing. Like that's story building, right? Like you have this, and this was a Lord of the Rings kind of thing too. Most of the best fantasy or sci-fi epics have created their own history and their own world, and that can be done bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
they didn't.
So this is one of those things, the names of the ships, like X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings, all of those. TIE Fighter is so named because it stands for Twin Ion Engine. And so it's an abbreviation like that. But those things are, to me, that kind of nomenclature falls into the same category as the line in Lord of the Rings when they say, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. And when you hear that line, you say, somehow these orcs know what a menu is, which means there must be restaurants in Mordor, which means that this orc must have tried to figure out how much to tip his server at some point in his life. In Star Wars, their alphabet, their language, Galactic Basic, is Arabesh. There is no A, B, X, or Y. There is no T, I, or E. And the words twin, ion, and engine certainly don't start with those letters. And so this is one of those things where you have to assume, okay, these are being translated into a language that we can understand. Right. And that's, to me, that's like a further, like,
That's so freaking cool.
that doesn't really work. Doesn't really hold up in the same way that Chewie's language doesn't hold up. But it doesn't get in the way unless I think about it too much.
Yeah.
It's cool that you're such a big nerd.
I honestly love it.
No,
Super
I do
nerd.
too.
We talked about it last week.
I'm just making fun of my boy. And on the Death Star, the so appropriately named ship, we get a lot of, I guess, shenanigans. Hootenanny, maybe?
Yeah.
Would be a good way of
Hootenanny,
putting
I
it.
think.
Yeah.
Intergalactic Hootenanny. That was the working title for this movie, actually.
So is TK421 burned into either of your brains like it is mine?
Yes, sir.
The serial number of the stormtrooper that Luke puts on the
I thought that
armor
was
of?
the like prison count for Jean Valjean.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not on the same level.
TK421, do you copy?
TK421.
So we're going to skip over some of the stuff that isn't extremely pressing, I think, such as they knock out some stormtroopers, they put on their armor.
Let's assume that everybody in the whole world has seen this movie.
That's kind of where I'm
otherwise they wouldn't be
operating
listening to
from.
this. So I think it's probably okay to jump ahead to the trash compactor, the rescue of Leia, and then Ben and Vader's duel.
I agree, but before the trash compactor, I do just want to point out one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars is I'm fine, we're fine here, how are you? From Han Solo.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then he just shoots the microphone as though that's going to fix everything.
Luke, we're going to have company.
And that is Han. I mean, the shooting of the
Harrison
microphone.
Ford.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
And then we get Leia and all of her sass and attitude, which is just top notch.
Hey, talk about risk. I mean, this is a strong female character.
Oh my! I absolutely adore the character of Princess Leia.
Yeah.
She is powerful.
Yeah.
And she has tons and tons of personality to bring along for the ride, including diving headfirst into the trash compactor, which is one of the scariest things I'd ever seen as a
That's
child.
the thing that creeped me out a lot.
Yes. That just like boop,
Nope.
back down.
Nope.
No, thank you. And then the walls closing in, how scared Chewie is. It was just a lot for me as a 3-year-old to take in.
Honestly, this is the funniest part of A New Hope is
Let's
when
say,
C-3PO is saying like,
When
they're celebrating.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's so fun.
But that is another example of like things in my mind that I don't think of when I think of Star Wars. And I'm just like, it's so serious and intense. And then I watch it, I'm like, no, it's fun and awesome.
yeah.
and
I'm really
goofy.
hoping that that's what this series is going to be for me, a chance to kind of deconstruct Star Wars from what I've built it up to be
Hey,
in my
that's where
mind
I'm going
and
with
say
this.
like, hey, what is this actually? Because
I'm hoping that it lends me a new appreciation for maybe a newer installment that I wasn't a huge fan of.
same.
Is where I'm going with this.
Same.
I'm going into this. I want that to happen. Just by the way, I want to get there and go. Oh, I get it now.
Can't wait.
So we'll see what happens.
But right now, Obi-Wan's fighting Darth Vader.
And it's my super dump.
Okay, yeah.
This might be a little spicy.
I guarantee you it's not.
The original lightsaber combat is so unbelievably boring.
The choreography is so bad.
It
does not
awful.
hold up.
Well, and the original
Yeah.
idea was that lightsabers were incredibly heavy to hold
Yep.
and took a lot of effort to swing and was based after
William Wallace's sword. I might as well be
right, like that kind of like
like
it was
a
based-
5-foot tall.
So it was based after samurai like combat, which is very like your move, my move, like counter. That's it. And so it is just so boring
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
even fighting.
No, it's super boring.
Yeah.
And just watching this, it's like, it's a miracle that I fell in love with this particular aspect of this series when all I knew was this movie.
So my job, eagle-eared listeners might know that my job, I've referenced it several times, involves video production. Like
Right.
I'm a full-time video production professional.
Yeah.
The earliest project I can remember working on, I was maybe 9, was a stop-motion Lego version of this scene from A New Hope.
Where the combat was dope.
Where they were fighting, I went in Microsoft Paint and drew actual like lightsaber blades on my Lego guys. I, for a long time, was really, really stuck on what do I use for the establishing shot of the Death Star. I used a penny.
Yep.
The penny was the Death Star and zoomed in on that, and I drew stars in every frame in Microsoft Paint. I really need to try and find that because I'm pretty sure it's on my computer somewhere.
That
But
would be awesome.
I wish you
I
would.
put my camera up to my little TV in my room and recorded audio from the VHS version of this movie and did a shot-for-shot Lego version of this scene.
Yes. That fits everything I know about you.
Yeah, 100%.
When you first said this was your super dump, I was worried. But I totally get that because
Sure.
I felt the same way. Because here's what happens. The end of this fight is my super pump.
Yes, I
Because
love
we
this.
talk
Yeah.
about storytelling, we talk about the narrative, we talk about risk, we talk about confidence. The fact that Obi-Wan stops fighting and just disappears when Vader hits him, I don't know if there is a scene that carries more weight to the narrative of this franchise in terms of what, like the I don't know, the way that this world works.
Right.
To just let himself die to be stronger. Like,
I think that, to me, that is the clearest distillation of the message of the will of the Force. Because that's a phrase that we throw around a lot that we don't really define. And I think that is actually probably one of the core weaknesses of Star Wars as a franchise, is that we don't define our terms. So the will of the Force, we have to look for it.
You know how I feel about that.
We have to look for it in subtext, right? It's not really very overt. And so in this movie, both in Ben's death and in Luke finally turning off his targeting system, we can understand that the will of the Force has something to do with living in harmony with what is happening around you.
Right. Yeah.
Accepting what is happening and letting it, like Yoda says in the next one, letting it flow through you, right? And choosing to be a conduit for the things that are happening and to affect them positively, but to not aggressively resist things that are happening.
yeah. And the fact that it just, again, I was trying so hard to take myself and be like, imagine you're watching it for the first time. How bonkers is that?
Right.
You just saw, has that ever happened ever? Like you just saw somebody disappear. He's gone. It's just his robes. Even Vader is not familiar with this, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, this has never happened before. So in like, I know we talked a lot about like not jumping forward, but there's stuff that we're going to talk about in like 6 weeks, 5 weeks. This has never happened before.
It's never knowingly happened before in Vader's knowledge. There is strong hinting that it has happened before.
This has actually not happened before.
to where
like
they
this version?
to where there's no body. Because we do see that other Jedi, we have a ceremony where their bodies are burned.
There is another Jedi. There is one other Jedi ever who has been able to commune with people through the Force after death. This has never happened. This is like that Jedi has died and his spirit has lived on. This is the first Jedi that's been, like from the Bible, Elijah caught up in a chariot of fire.
Right.
And did not experience a physical death.
Right.
Yeah. And so, super pump. Like
Yeah,
this,
it's awesome.
the fact that this happens.
Well-
the fact that he knows that Luke is watching, looks over to Luke, okay, you're here, I'm out.
That's the thing. That's what's, I think, important to not overlook. He waits until Luke is watching to do this because it serves two purposes. He's stronger as a Force ghost, but also he knows that this is a push that Luke needs.
Is he stronger as a Force ghost?
Well, that's what
He says, I can be more powerful than you can possibly imagine. I hope that Vader is not imagining something less than a blue ghost who gives advice. Because that's pretty much what he does.
He might as
from
well
now
be
on.
the paperclip on Microsoft.
Exactly.
Right?
I notice you're trying to do something. Need some help?
I notice you're
It's me,
trying
Clippy
to
Wong
blast
Kenobi.
womp rats in Beggar's Canyon. No, but I think, I mean, you have to give some credit for creative license and kind of go along with it, obviously. But I think that the idea is that he can't be in the X-Wing with Luke unless he's dead. He can't like help in that. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
conscience.
and I mean, to be clear, like building off of, I've decided just now it's going to be impossible to talk about this without spoiling a future movie. So if you haven't seen Star Wars, maybe skip ahead 30 seconds.
or about 3 months.
That's true also. Knowing what we know about Anakin and part of his descent into the dark side, what his number one thing he was trying to stop was somebody's death.
Right.
And so Ben, in so doing, in giving up his life and cheating death, becomes more powerful than what Anakin can imagine, what he knows to be reality.
That's good.
Maybe that's what we're supposed to infer with this. I don't know. It's one of those lines. It's like, it's cool. Doesn't add up for me.
George, if you need help on any future projects, you can reach out to us
George
at 2 chunks
is
and a hunk
out
at
of the driver's seat.
gmail.com. I know, JJ, you too. But
Sounds like a droid.
Han, Luke, Leia, they get out of there. They bounce. And they go to Yavin 4, the fourth moon of Yavin. And they
My favorite
decide-
moon of Yavin.
Sure.
I'm glad they chose this location.
Fourth in the count, number one in our hearts, I
The
think.
first three are so bad.
And
No.
5 through a billion, ugh.
They're not good at all. Yavin's a big gas giant about the size of Jupiter.
And so we get this point where they're at the rebel base, they're coming under attack, and they got to go blow up the Death Star. And they know the answer due to the plans delivered to Leia at the very beginning of this movie.
This is my go-to example when I'm explaining story structure, basic 3-act story structure to somebody. So the hallmark of beginning the third act of your story is that the lines of conflict are very clearly drawn and we know what must be overcome and what must be accomplished
Right.
to defeat the antagonist. This Death Star briefing is exactly that. Like this is, if I were to ever write a curriculum or teach a class, this is the only scene that I would use as an example of we're entering our third act.
Sure. And let's not overlook all of the fun, like, world building that we get here on this rebel base. All the different aliens, all the different, like, costumes, all the different types of people and rebel soldiers. Like, that's just awesome.
Speaking of soldiers, 2 chunks and a hunk. I've maybe been doing this for a year and a half now. I was trying to think back. Did I start May of... Was it May? Summer
May
for
of
me?
May of
2018.
18.
That feels
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
Yeah, so a year and a half. That's crazy. Doing 2 chunks and being a host on 2 chunks opened something I didn't know I had in terms of like a critical eye. I never have looked as intently at movies before. Here's what it did for me in this scene. Whoa, there's a bunch of duds that are in this group.
Big time.
So much.
Whoa, wee.
So much.
And this is also the first time I thought of Mark Hamill as the way of as we've super dumped. It's like I've never thought that he wasn't good, like, because we are a movie review, right? This isn't a Star Wars fandom podcast because that one couldn't last as long as what we want this to last. But like watching that and some of the people just standing, I've talked about before, like you can be a better listener. You can act like a better listener than what some of these people have done. But I feel like they were just pulled up. I mean,
Callie has said like 10 times in the last 2 movies of Star Wars that we have watched together, that's got to be somebody's cousin. Like, it's like they're related to somebody in this movie. Yeah.
So I just wanted to take an aside for that. But I hadn't seen it more than for those that are about to go attack. Yeah.
Right. And in that attack, we actually get some cool characters. We get some of Luke's childhood friends from Tatooine, the ones that he mentioned to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru about how that's what you did last year when they went off and all that stuff.
Chelsea had a hard time with this, but I understood it.
Okay.
In that Luke, and again, we can chalk this up to him being maybe one of the stronger Jedi in the galaxy.
Sure.
Boy, he's picking up on stuff really quick. I've never seen him fly an X-Wing.
But the hint is that he's a naturally gifted pilot.
So there are.
What am I supposed to understand about spaceship flying?
That's true. There are a lot of accusations that Luke is. We've talked on the show before about Mary Sue's. That's a female character who just has everything go right for her all the time, and she doesn't have to trade anything because she's the best. There's been accusations that
he's
Luke,
a Larry Sue,
a Marty Stew.
Well, and then we get later
called.
that so is Anakin, right?
Sure.
Right, but I think the difference is that with Luke, and granted, it is told to us and not shown, which is, I think, where these accusations gain a footing.
Okay.
There are several points in this movie where, like in the beginning, the first hint we get of this is Obi-Wan saying he was a gifted pilot, much like yourself. And we get these little things of people talking about how Luke's a good pilot.
So
and
he's
things
probably
like that.
known
So-
around Tatooine as like a good
Right.
pilot.
And he's like the Jesse Iwuji of
Right.
Tatooine, where it's like, you're good at this vehicle. So
And if I was to put myself in the situation of, okay, what makes me satisfied? That makes a pretty dumb movie. Like, I don't want to have a 30-minute montage of him being trained to fly an X-Wing.
Sure.
yeah.
So it's like,
he does pick up
figure
on
it
it pretty
out.
fast. And it to me, it's also a little bit of like, man, if this is their one shot to destroy this super weapon,
Why are they putting this
Why are they
dude in
putting
one of
this random kid on the front lines?
Sure.
Why are they
Sure.
giving him a shot?
Why is
Yeah.
he in Red Squadron?
That's
They're
a
tight.
big deal. Yeah.
Why does he get to be Red 5?
Yeah.
So they go on this Death Star attack.
Which I do want to say, this in the original script, the Death Star is stationary. It is not moving to attack Yavin. It is just sitting there. When they shot this movie, the Death Star is stationary. It is not moving to attack Yavin. It is just sitting there. So there is no urgency. There's no time limit to this. Star Wars was 100% saved in the editing bay. This was the head editor. I don't remember her name. This was her idea to say, hey, the station actually needs to be closing in. There needs to be some sort of stakes other than we really want this to happen.
Right.
Are you talking? Did you watch a documentary about this?
I don't remember if it was a documentary or an article.
Dillman, my brother-in-law, who we shouted out earlier, said, hey, you're going to really appreciate the OG series more when you watch the documentary about how editing in general saved the original franchise.
Absolutely.
It's edited really well for what they're working with.
And I think that's a testament to creative genius that's real pie in the sky of like, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? Being surrounded by people who say, hey, this would work really well.
Yeah.
Right.
People who are able to take these giant ideas and make them accessible to people.
Yeah.
And I think that's spoilers for our discussion in about a month. That's the chief sin of the prequels, is that we didn't have somebody willing to say, hey, maybe this would actually be good.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we have that here. And it's why this Death Star trench run still holds up 42 years later.
So I've said it a couple times already, but this was also almost my super pump. The Death Star trench run is some of the most compelling action for me in any movie.
And the fact Vader's involved.
Right.
Like
that Vader's like, Vader essentially Thanos is and says, I'll do this myself.
Already giving it to us. Hey, your dad was a great pilot. You know, like
They did not know that Vader was was Luke's father at this point.
no way.
They hadn't decided that.
Oh,
So at the
that's
time this
amazing.
movie
I'm like
at the time this movie was shot, Obi-Wan was telling the truth. Vader killed Anakin Skywalker.
Chunky's. Okay, here's the thing. Here's a good image for you. It might be for Jordan and I both. But like when Doge starts talking about certain things, I imagine myself sitting on the kindergarten carpeted floor with my blocks and my legs crossed.
Because I'm so condescending to you
No.
children.
I didn't know what condescension meant when I was 5 years old. So like, I don't know. I love this.
I'm taking offense to this because I feel like I know a lot about Star Wars too.
I don't feel like you know as much as Doge does.
I definitely don't know as much as Doge.
Then if you don't want to be as naive as me,
I feel
if
like
you
maybe
feel like
I'm
you'll lose friends from
I
it.
feel like maybe I'm the young TA who's kind of hanging out with the cool teacher
You're
who's
doing
willing
student
to take
teaching.
me. Yeah.
You're doing student teaching.
And like, you know what I mean? Like
But this is Mr. D's
kinda cool.
classroom.
Yeah, but the young TA is like really cool, and like all the lady teachers are like, "Can we hang out with that young TA?" And I'm like,
But all
taken.
the,
I'm
but
taken.
all the moms are like, can I hang out with Mr.
right?
D?
Yeah, yeah. Mr. D, like moms love him.
what have I done?
So Luke booms the Womp Rats, blows up the Death Star, and Han comes in, saves the day.
Yeah, only succeeding in doing so, though, by trusting in the Force.
Right.
By refusing to try to control the situation and letting the situation flow through him. I think that's probably something important to track is like, if we establish in this one that the theme of Star Wars is live in harmony with the Force.
Yeah, that's important.
Then I think we need to track that and see, okay, do we change what it means to follow the will of the Force? Like, do we hold on to that thematic thread throughout the rest of these 8 other movies,
Yeah.
10 other movies? There's so many Star Wars.
There's a bunch of wars.
Get excited.
And once the Death Star has been exploded,
A real good explosion, by the way.
real good explosion.
Holds up.
Goes
I
on for about
love
25
it.
minutes.
I dig it.
Darth Vader spins out of frame and goes, no.
That's true.
No.
And then we get,
No, I wish you didn't.
Bella, don't touch me. I'm a monster. We get the best medal ceremony in any movie.
Chewie deserves a medal.
Yeah.
Chewie deserves a medal. There's also a video where somebody took out all the music. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You need
There's
to look
also a
that
Star
up.
Wars comic that Marvel... So I don't know if our readers are aware of this. Since Disney owns Star Wars, Marvel prints Star Wars comics.
True.
They've just ended a 4-year run of comics that take place in between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. They're picking up next year with comics that are between Empire and Jedi.
Are they pretty good?
Very good.
Oh, great.
Very incredibly good. And they're canon. So they're really fun, and they kind of help flesh out that story of how Luke goes from this whiny guy to more of like a confident leader of the rebellion.
He's Commander Skywalker
Absolutely.
by the time we
but
start
one of the first
Empire
things
Strikes
that
Back.
happens in this comic run is that Leia gives Chewie a medal, which
Good.
felt a little bit like a Band-Aid after the fact. But
That's
Chewie
okay.
super deserves a medal
Hey,
love
here.
that.
when else do you need Band-Aids? If you're putting on Band-Aids before the fact,
But what if
You're
you
a
put on
little
knee
paranoid.
pads so you won't need a Band-Aid?
well, that's a different metaphor entirely, and I wasn't prepared to deal with it. So then we get credits. That's the movie, folks.
Hey, there is no falling action after the climax of this movie.
Correct.
So in terms of being emblematic of great story structure with our entrance into the third act, we have a really hard time ending our movie, so we just end it. We just circle wipe to black.
They weren't positive that there would be a follow-up at this point.
Absolutely, but still you have to end your story. Something happens, right? There's something that happens with our character arcs after they get their medals.
Right, but what I'm saying is maybe retroactively we should be thankful that there wasn't something set up that they had to either abandon or chase down so they could tie off the thread.
Yep.
Yeah,
But-
that's fair. I feel like we don't land our characters anywhere meaningful.
I agree.
We land them as if their whole life's goal was to get a medal from Princess
I
Leia in
agree.
this ceremony. And that's
A
just
woman that
that
many of them
they've
did
only
not
just
know
met.
existed.
Exactly. Like we just don't land our characters anywhere meaningful.
Right, I agree with that completely.
But Luke does get a sweet yellow leather jacket.
Which I'm very into.
He wears it for almost the whole comic run, so read those.
Very
Read
good.
them up
Shall we rate this movie?
if you want.
We here at Two Chunks and a Hunk have partnered with the science laboratories on Camino to figure out how to rate movies. Sorry, I didn't know where I was going with that when I started it.
We all found out together.
It's true, and it wasn't great. It's the Intergalactic Cinema Scale, and it is as follows. The best thing we can ever say about a movie is own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. After that, it's buy it, followed by rent it, and then stream it. After that, it's forget it, and last, but certainly least, the worst thing we could ever say about a movie. The Force has forsaken us.
Same.
I'd like to go first.
Fine.
And my answer is to buy it. I'm buying this movie. I'm buying it with my dollars. I love this movie, and I could just go for the rest of the time talking about how much I love it.
For me, it's obviously a poster. How do you not buy this poster? If you're going to buy a poster of any movie we've talked about, how is it not 1977's Star Wars?
Yeah.
Without this movie, I don't think our show would exist. Like none of the movies we've talked about before this would exist without this one.
My obsession with movies probably would not
It's
exist.
100% because of Star Wars for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. Poster. Easy poster.
I'm going to buy the poster too. And what's tough is like, even if it's the first time you've seen it and you want to make some kind of argument that it's not good or not significant, I think most people are going to think you're wrong.
Yeah.
You could ask the people that say, well, how many awards did it win? Or was it nominated for that? Sure. If you want to be that stuck up, sure. It won 6 Oscars. Like, how much money did it make? Well, the most that the 70s had ever seen.
Right.
Like, it's just...
But name another movie from 77 that's getting a sequel this December.
Right.
That's crazy.
I don't know, when did
Exactly.
Rambo come out?
Good point.
That's actually
It's a buy the poster, absolutely. It is pop culture. It is risk. It is confidence. It is not perfect.
Sure.
It's Star Wars.
Not
It's
by a
better
long
than
shot.
It's better than perfect. It's Star Wars. It's just amazing.
Yeah. It's kind of its own scale at this point.
Exactly.
Even. So make sure if you want to hear us talk about more Star Wars that you tune in next week as we cover The Empire Strikes Back. I cannot wait.
very, very excited to talk about this one with you guys.
Oh, man. It's going to be good stuff. Hey, to end today's episode, I'd like for us each to name a ship in the Star Wars universe. A brand new ship with a brand new name.
Proper name like Millennium Falcon
Yep.
or like a model name?
Nope,
like
we're
X-Wing?
naming it like the Millennium Falcon. Like we
Perfect.
are a bounty hunter of some sort,
Perfect.
flying our own ship. For Two Chunks and a Hunk, I'm Jordan Wonders, and the ship that I'm flying around in is the Hungry Wagon 5. There have been 4 before it, all destroyed in horrible drive-through space accidents.
But this one's the hungriest.
this is the hungriest.
I'm Doge, and I'm a bounty hunter, and my ship is green and is shaped like a dagger. And it's called the Jade Interceptor,
Nice.
mostly because I didn't know we were doing joke names.
Hey! Mine's called the Beta Calf. The Beta Calf is the second in a line of big ships. They're big square ships that drive around and give people their favorite square-shaped pizza, just like the cafeteria used to for me.
Yeah.
The Beta Calf is there for you if you want
Second one.
some 2% milk and some pizza and some mac and cheese, because everybody's got to eat.
Weird that 2 of them were food themed.
Hey, it didn't change it based off of yours.
You know what they say?
Dinner time.
See you next week.